Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. We appreciate you being here, taking the time of your lunch to join us today. Like she said, we're the Empowering Financial Wellness team. My name is Kellen, also joined by Rochelle and Vincenza, who's going to be helping to moderate the chat. Um, and a bit about our program. We're accredited financial counselors and program coordinators for the Empowering Financial Wellness program of USU Extension. Um, our program is a grant-funded program by the Department of Workforce Services. And our mission is really to just provide free financial education throughout the entire state of Utah. So all of our classes, everything is completely free, and we'll share more about that in just a second. But like she said, the title of our class today is how to make ends meet, practical budgeting for tight times. I'm sure all of us have been feeling that recently with inflation and now with potentially tariffs raising prices and there's so many things that are really weighing on our wallets. And it can be hard sometimes to make it through the month while navigating all of those expensive things. So we're gonna share some tools and resources today for being able to navigate all of that. And when we are in tight times, how to be able to make a plan to get through it. The logistics for our class today. Um, I recognize some of the names of people joining us. I know you've joined us in classes before, but if you haven't, um, feel free to ask questions during the webinar. You can send messages in the chat. That would be a perfect way to ask questions. We're going to be moderating the chat. Vincenza's going to help us answer questions and share some resources. So, and if you would like any of the slides or resources we share, let us know and we can get those to you. We can always send things to Lisa and have things sent out as well if we need. Um, and then, like I said, we are a grant funded program, which means that we are able to provide these classes for free all over the state of Utah. But the only thing that's asked of us is that we collect surveys at the end of our classes. So we're going to leave a little bit of time at the end for you to please make sure you fill out a brief survey about what you learned today and if you feel like it was valuable. So, um, without we're gonna jump right into things. We've got um a few objectives today. We like to break our classes down into different learning objectives. The first objective is how to adjust a budget with changes in income or cost of living. As things get more expensive or potentially our income gets a little bit lower, we're going to talk about how to adjust and some tools for helping us create a positive plan. We're also going to be talking about strategies and free tools for cutting and prioritizing expenses. Um, Sometimes at the end of the day, there's just what comes in might not be enough to cover what's currently going out. So we're going to talk about ways to adjust that. And then lastly, whenever we talk about budgeting, we find that one of the most common reasons that people aren't successful with budgeting in the long term is that they immediately go to cut out everything that gives you fun and freedom in your life. If it's not necessary, I'm going to cut it out entirely. And what we find is that that's just like a diet, where if you cut out all sweets entirely, you're gonna last a couple weeks and then inevitably eat a bunch. So we're gonna talk about setting up savings accounts specifically to help you afford that fun and freedom in your life, to help you become a more successful budgeter. So those are our objectives today. We wanted to start off in asking a little bit of a poll in the chat. Just send a 1, 2, or a 3 in chat. Will be perfect for this. What's your top concern with budgeting when times are tight? Is it paying bills and living expenses, managing your debts, or maintaining a current lifestyle? If there's another option as well that concerns you, feel free to type that out in chat as well, but just send 1, 2, or 3 in chat. I'm seeing mostly ones. One person said paying extra on debt. Seeing a few threes sprinkled in there as well. A couple twos. All right, thanks so much, everyone. Still being able to save. Yeah, for sure. When times are tight, we want to still make sure we've got something, got something in the bank for those unexpected things that come up. Thanks for sharing that, Caitlin. But thanks everybody for sharing. I'm seeing a majority of people saying 1. paying bills and living expenses with quite a few people as well having 2 and 3 sprinkled in there. So thanks so much everyone for sharing. It's interesting to hear and see, and also may help us be able to tailor what we say going forward. So but with that, let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right into objective one, how to adjust a budget with changes in income or cost of living. And I'm going to turn things over to Rochelle to take us forward into this objective.
Thanks, Kellen. That poll is so interesting to me. There was a little survey recently with the Pew Research Center that found that 57% of Americans say that they are concerned about their ability to pay for basic expenses as the economy changes. So we're feeling that, and we see that definitely even in that poll within this Zoom. So how are we going to actually adjust a budget when we have changes in income? Well, anytime that we are facing the unknown, we do get a little stressed. It's really overwhelming and we don't know how to handle things oftentimes, and we kind of panic and we start to spiral. So if we can start by just looking closely at our financial situation, then we can take the time to find out exactly where we stand. We need to know what's coming in, what's going out, and what we owe. Now, this is a little bit intimidating initially because we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. But when we know the facts, it can give us a lot of relief because it finally will give us something concrete to work with. So we definitely want to get as many of our puzzle pieces in line as we possibly can, because once we have a clear picture, then we can start making a plan. So think about exactly what challenges you're dealing with and break them down into some smaller manageable steps. And then, of course, focus your energy on things that you can change, because at the end of the day, there are some things that we flat out cannot change. We're going to talk about those in a minute. But the key here is to start small and be realistic and then adjust things as we go. And the more that we feel in control, then that's going to alleviate a lot of our stress. So we want to get this plan together. So how do we actually do this? Well, when we talk about money, we're going to talk about knowing our essential monthly expenses. So knowing our essential monthly expenses becomes really important. These are going to be the non-negotiables. Things like a roof over our head, the utilities to keep the lights on, insurance, transportation, just the things that we need to keep our lives going somewhat smoothly, right? Because this is a big change. But by clearly defining these, you can focus on your limited resources on what really matters. And that's just going to make it so that your basic needs are met first. So a good example of this is just drawing a line in between what is fixed in your income, what is absolutely essential, and what is non-essential. And that just helps that you're going to meet your basic needs first. So when we understand our essential expenses, it helps us create this lean, no frills budget. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But it's going to work in a tough time. So if you're facing, say, a reduced income or unexpected bills, then knowing what these essentials are is a great point to start making adjustments down the line with other items. So that way you'll just know where you can cut back and allocate your money to avoid falling behind on critical payments. And it's a practical way to stay in control, even when finances are feeling overwhelming. Yeah, I love this. So there are lots of things that are not on this screen. So internet, it's a big one. Medical savings. Yeah, we have to have a way to communicate. There's a lot of things that are going to be essential to functioning in our world. Okay, so then our step 2 is going to look at our non-essentials. This is the key part because this is where we can make some adjustments possibly. So these are often our everyday expenditures, groceries, um, subscriptions, hobbies, gifts, entertainment. There's a lot that goes into some flexible costs. Some are totally discretionary, others may not. And so again, we have a little asterisk here that says this is going to align with your personal values. Um, Sometimes when we talk about budgeting, there will be people that say you have to do this. We are here to tell you that you get to make this your own, so, because personal finance is personal. But when we look at these discretionary costs, it helps give us a lot of clarity so that we can prioritize our spending, so that we know that our limited resources are going to be directed towards our essential things and our goals. And so how we want to look at this is to use some tools if we go into this. So we're going
Michelle,
to talk about,
could I jump in here for a second before we move on
sure,
to the tools?
absolutely.
Something I love about organizing things this way, we say non-essential, but we don't say non-important. There are some things, for example, retirement savings in my mind is not an essential because if I needed to for a month or two, I could cut that out if I needed to get through the month, right? I would 100% sacrifice putting something in my retirement accounts in order to pay for groceries, right? But that doesn't mean that it's not important to me. So that's just an important distinction to make about what we're talking about here. We're not talking about things that aren't important, just things that aren't essential. So it helps when we talk about aligning things, spending with personal values. It really helps me to have my most important things at the top of the list. I've got my essentials in this block. Then, like Rochelle said, you've got a line between your essentials and non-essentials. But right at the top of my non-essentials are the important things for me. Emergency savings, retirement savings, all of these different things, maybe extra debt payments, these things that are important to me and I would not like to sacrifice if I didn't absolutely have to. And then as I get going further down the list, I may put things like a gym membership, where that may be something I'd cancel faster, or a Netflix subscription, maybe the first thing I cancel. It's at the bottom. So anyway, I just wanted to make that point clear that not essential does not mean not important.
Yes, thank you. That is very true. So we do have things that are important. And where do they lie in this importance, truly? And so once we are making a list here, that's where we get to give them um, ranking, truly. And then we can choose where we need to be. And this is flexible. So maybe if this isn't working, it gets switched up again. But we just want to know what we cannot live without and what we possibly could live without. And it might still be important and it can fall upon the list of priorities in that way. So that's a very good point. So we're going to talk about some of the tools that we have. So how are we going to actually create a plan? Well, once we know our essentials and our non-essentials, then we can use some of these tools that we love to teach about. We love to teach about a zero-based budget. We also like to tell people about cash envelope system and a cash flow budget. So we're going to break these down a little bit more into why we love them and how you could use them. And you could also use a mix of these. So feel free to make this your very own and make it work for you. But let's talk about a zero-based budget. I did not know that this actually had a name. I just thought that you had your income and your expenses and you were supposed to get to zero. But it actually does have a name. And the reason that we call it the zero-based budget is because we are giving every dollar a job. So if we give every dollar a plan and a purpose, then we're micromanaging our money in a fantastic way. We get to give every dollar the job as we see fit, and we get to decide in advance where every one of those dollars gets spent. So with this, we do want to have our income minus our expenses, and we want to allocate them to get to zero. This doesn't mean that the bank account gets to zero. It just means our plan gets to zero. And that means that we are going to allocate all of our money towards our expenses, savings, debt payments, and so forth. Now, typically, you're not going to spend any money unless it's planned for, because you have to justify every single expense. But this zero-based budget can help identify some areas where maybe money is being wasted. And it encourages you to question every line item on your budget and determine if it is an essential or a non-essential item. And this just helps us be more mindful when we talk about using our finances. So we love this framework just because of that micromanagement in a good way. And it is fantastic. So let's look at an example of a zero-based budget here. Okay, so with this zero-based budget, we love this because it works for any income. It gives every dollar the job. It helps us to meet our goals, and it helps us to avoid living paycheck to paycheck. Now, in this example, you will see that this person is still able to eat out. They are still putting money away for retirement. They are still putting money into an emergency fund, and they're still paying their student loan payments. So this can look a lot of different ways, but at the end of the day, the zero at the bottom is what we're after. And Kellen puts a very good point in the chat that this does take some work. So sometimes I feel like when people start doing a budget, they're like, that didn't work, I quit. This takes work. This can take even 6 months to a year. So don't give up, because practice does make perfect for this zero-based budget. So one of our favorite tools to teach about, but really truly just getting real with every line item on the budget. Okay, our next tool that we like to talk about is the cash envelope system. So this is a fantastic method because it is going to create physical limits on your spending. No one wants to get to the cashier and not have enough money. That's embarrassing. So it gives you really a limit on this, and your spending becomes tangible. And it has been proven that you will spend 30% less when you use cash over using a card. So how we do this is we get an envelope and we write a line item on it. So we could write groceries, we could write gas, we could write haircuts, we could write a few different things on these envelopes, and then we put the cash in the envelope for those expenses. When it's gone until the next paycheck. So you're going to allocate maybe some flexible spending and withdraw this cash and put it into the envelope. So this is great if you struggle with overspending on in an area. So if you're dining out too much, this is a great way to rein that in, because once the cash is gone, you don't get more till the next paycheck. And this method also does involve you leaving your credit cards and debit cards at home. So we've all seen the proof that is in the pudding when you are able to tap a card or swipe. It's so much easier to spend. So this works against that and just makes you be really mindful. So this is a great way to do things. Now you can do a few categories, you can do many categories. This is up to you. It doesn't have to be all or none. I know some people that do a cash envelope system and do it all or none, and that's okay. But even just a few categories that you want to cut back in, it just helps you stay in control and give you that weekly gut check of like, oh, how am I doing? Okay, I stayed within the envelope, so we're good. Now, if you have leftover cash, you might want to roll it over into another envelope. You might want to roll it into the next month. Truly, it's up to you. And that's the most wonderful part about this, is that you get to decide what's going to work for you. But this is a great way to rein in that discretionary spending and say, okay, I only have this. I need to stay within this budget. Kellen saying that he did that and you save so much. I actually had my kid do that the other day. I'm like, your lunches are getting a little pricey. Here's cash instead. So good luck with that. And maybe the experience will be the teacher when he is out of money. So cash envelope method, it seems so simple because it is, and it works because of the simplicity. So we do love that. All right, we're going to talk about cash flow budgeting. So cash flow budgeting is a plan to track the money in and out over a period of time. And it just details your income on when you're actually getting paid and when your expenses are actually leaving your account. And it's a game changer because it's all about timing and making sure that the money is in your account before you need to spend it. So instead of just looking at a monthly budget as one big block, it's looking at each week and seeing when you get your paycheck, when the expenses are being paid. And that way you can make sure that there's enough to cover those expenses every week. So this is really helpful if you've got irregular work or a variable income or commission-based. Vincenza's putting the link to this cash flow budget into the chat, and it is a great fillable PDF, but this is kind of what it looks like. So as we use this cash flow budget, we put in our income, and then we put in all of the expenses. And we can arrange this so that everything works out. Now, this example that I have is so tiny. I actually made this based on a college student. So someone who is getting paid $1,500 a month. So you can see that they get paid in week one and they have to pay their rent right off the bat. We actually did a little bit of some research as a team on this, and most people for their mortgage or their rent, they had to pay it on the first, and that was not flexible. So I did put the rent on there first, and then of course this person is still saving for emergencies and other goals, but they're making sure that they're paying for groceries and transportation as well. So they end that week with $75. Now, the following week, they don't get paid again. They've got to make that $75 last. So they allocate that they're maybe going to get 1 tank of gas or something along those lines. Now, the third week, they're getting paid again. So that's when they've asked their cell phone provider to move the bill to that week. And that's when they can also make the car payment or the car insurance payment. So that third week ends with $250. And then going into the fourth week, they have a little bit extra as well. So this is a great way to line up when your bills will come out. And you may ask people that you owe, you can ask for your bill dates to change. A lot of the utility companies were able to be changed. Some of the cell phone companies. So just ask, truly. A lot of your banks and financial institutions are willing to change the due dates on things. So just ask, truly, and help this cash flow budget make sense. But truly, this cash flow budgeting is going to help you stay on top of your finances, because even if you're varying every month, you can see what you have to move forward. But ultimately, no matter what tool you use of these three that I've covered, tracking and monitoring is the most important step. So we're going to talk next about tracking expenses, and I will turn this part over to Kellen.
Thanks, Rochelle. So Rochelle gave us some wonderful tools for being able to make the plan and help manage our plan, manage our finances. But then there is, of course, how do you actually track that? Because what we put on paper at the beginning of the month and what happens during the month are always going to be different. No matter how wonderful you are at budgeting, no matter how much practice you have, there's always going to be a difference. So we need to be able to track what's actually coming in, what's actually going out, so that we can keep ourselves on track. There's a lot of different ways that we can do this. You can use a budgeting worksheet. There's a bunch of free tools online. Vincenza just shared a link in chat for a free one from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Just a free, simple, fillable PDF that you can use if you wanted to use a budgeting worksheet. You could use a spreadsheet if you want. This is what I use. I have my own little spreadsheet that I've made where I put all my spending categories, and it makes things simple for me using a spreadsheet. You could use a budgeting app. There's a lot of different budgeting apps out there. We don't have one that we recommend because all of them are going to work for different people in different circumstances. We will say that almost all of the largest and best budgeting apps either have a free version or a free trial. So try a few of them out to see if you like them. There's pros and cons to each of them. So make sure it works in your situation with a free trial or the free version. And then if you choose, you can choose to use the paid version as well. The benefit to using a budgeting app with the paid version is that most of them are automatic. You can link it straight to your bank accounts and credit cards so that it does the tracking for you as soon as you swipe your card. That can be a benefit to a lot of people and make it worth the cost, but it's all up to you. Another method, you could use a credit card. The idea behind this is sort of like the cash envelope system. You assign one card to use for all of your essentials, maybe all of your bills, and all of those essentials come out of your checking accounts. And then you use a credit card for all of your discretionary spending. That makes it easier to track because you don't have to go searching around all of your different statements to see what you're spending. You can log into one account and see all of your maybe non-essential or discretionary spending for that month. It makes it a lot easier to track. Some people I've even seen go so far is to use one card. They have multiple different cards that they use each for a different budgeting category. They're almost doing the cash envelope system, but with different credit cards. It's an option. Um, we just recommend that you make sure that you are able to manage the number of cards you have. Otherwise, you may get into the situation where you may be making late payments. But it's a strategy to use. Is just use one card for all of your discretionary spending. Can make it a lot easier to track and make sure you're not going over. And seeing some good conversations and chat about budgeting apps. It's true. It can take some time, but a lot of people find them to be very worth it. So why do we need to do it in the first place? So once we go through tracking, um, which when we talk about tracking, you can do it just on a month by month basis, like your budget, but it's extremely helpful to do it even weekly, much more often than once a month, because it can help you tweak categories and make adjustments as needed. Let's say you plan to spend $400 on groceries this month, but then surprise, everything coming from Canada is now 20% more expensive or whatever, or any number of reasons. You may end up spending closer to 500 or $550 on groceries. But if you're tracking every single week, you are able to notice that. You're able to notice, I'm spending more than I thought I would on groceries. So what can I adjust? Oh, you know what? I haven't spent a lot on this category this month. So I'm going to cut a bit from this category and put it into groceries so I can meet my essentials, right? Track and adjust as needed. It also, tracking expenses helps us reveal our spending habits. If you haven't tracked your expenses before, I guarantee you there's going to be things that you're spending money on that you aren't aware of, or you aren't aware just how much you're spending, knowing where your money is going, right? This happened to me a couple of years ago when I hadn't been tracking my expenses for a long time, and I read that the average American spends $6,000 on fast food every year, which I was shocked. And so I went through and tracked my spending, and I was much closer to that amount than I felt comfortable being. I was spending way more on fast food than I ever thought because it was just a little bit here, a little bit there, right? But by tracking my expenses, I revealed that spending habit, was seeing that I was spending thousands of dollars more than I was comfortable with on this category that wasn't essential to me, and I was able to adjust, which goes to our third point, align with personal goals. Once we notice where our money's going, we can make sure it lines up with what we actually want to be doing. I was able to make adjustments and change that spending habit and use those couple $1,000s a year to go towards other goals such as family vacations. So tracking expenses is so essential and can really, really help us feel in control of our finances, combined with these tools that Rochelle shared, even during tight times. So there's still some great conversations going on about apps in the chat. I love it. Keep those going. So what do we know so far? We're getting to the end of our first objective. Change can be stressful when there's changes in income, when there's changes in cost of living, changes in prices. So evaluate exactly where you are and where you need to be. Make a plan of your essentials and non-essentials. Oh, forgot to switch this. This should say essentials and non-essentials, so you can know where to cut back and align things to what's most important to you. And then use a budgeting tool. Use the best one you think will work oh, we're changing it in real time, for you to be able to carry out that plan. So with that, we're going to jump forward to objective 2, which is strategies and free tools for cutting and prioritizing your flexible expenses, your non-essentials or flexible. So the idea behind this is when you make a budget, you may find that you simply need a little bit more. You need to cut back some places. So Let's talk about, we'll skip this for sake of time, but when we talk about cutting expenses, it can be really helpful. We already talked about organizing our expenses in essential and non-essential. It can also be helpful as another strategy to look at things in terms of fixed and flexible. Fixed expenses being those things that are the exact same every month. They might not be essential, like maybe a Netflix subscription, maybe not essential, but it is fixed. It's the same amount every month. And then flexible. Again, flexible can be essential or non-essential, but it's those things that are changing every single month. The amount is changing. By organizing things like this, it can help us know exactly how we can start cutting expenses. If it's a fixed expense, it's pretty much an all or nothing. Do we cut that thing entirely or not? Or maybe there's a better deal we can get to pay $15 less a month on our cell phone or any number of things. But we have a little bit fewer options for what we can do with fixed expenses than with flexible. The flexible expenses are those things that change every month and we have a lot more control over. You know, gas. We can choose how much we're going into the office versus staying home, for example, and it may affect our gas if you've got a hybrid job, right? We can choose how much we're spending on clothing. We can put a little bit more work in to shop more deals and maybe not buy as many name brands to reduce our groceries. So it's really helpful to keep things in that category. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear my kids yelling in the background, but it's helpful to keep things in those categories. So we wanted to talk about a strategy. Like I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of times when we start thinking about budgeting and cutting expenses, our mind immediately goes to, oh, cut out everything that's not essential. And that can be really difficult and lead to us just not keeping up with our budget. It makes it too rigid. So the step down principle is a strategy for cutting expenses that lets us focus more on keeping the things that give us fun and freedom, but simply do them at a reduced cost. So the idea is that cutting expenses isn't like a cliff, it's like a staircase. The most expensive option is the top step, least expensive option is the bottom. And then we just keep stepping down until we feel comfortable. We don't have to go all the way to the bottom step. We can just go down until we feel comfortable. Maybe we're reducing the frequency that we are going to do that thing, or maybe we're changing how we do it so it's cheaper, or you know, maybe we're doing things at home more. There's any number of things we could do to step down, but you don't always have to go to the bottom. Let me give you an example. I taught a class a few months ago, and there was a family whose tradition was to go to the movies. They went at least once a month as a family, they said. That was their family tradition. It's something that they all loved. It was a time for them to spend quality time together as a family. That's not something they wanted to sacrifice. Rightly so. That's important to them. Is it essential? No, they'd still have a home and food if they didn't go to the movie theater, but it's still important. So if we look at that, the step down principle, the most expensive way to go to the movie theater here, go to the movies on a Friday night and get a drink and popcorn. You're spending a lot of money if that's the case, right? So how do we step it down? An idea could be go to movies Friday night and just popcorn. You're saving 20 bucks on drinks. Go to the movies Friday afternoon, matinee prices, right? Go to the movies on Tuesday. You can see how we're stepping down. This is again just a way for us to save money on the things that bring us joy, but not sacrifice them entirely. Now, here's a key part with the step down principle and with cutting expenses in general. Do the math behind it. If we decide to go to movies on Tuesday instead of Friday, maybe we're saving 40 bucks on tickets, depending on the size of our family, right? We may be saving up to 40 bucks on tickets. Do that math of how much money you're saving and then be very intentional with what you're doing with that money, with where you're putting it. Don't let that $40 just disappear somewhere else. Say, okay, I'm taking that $40 and that is going toward this. Maybe this is going toward our insurance because we need to up our insurance because our son's about to start driving or something like that. Whatever your situation may be, take that amount of money and assign it to something specific so it doesn't get lost. Thanks, Stephanie, for that comment. Yeah, the step down principle, it's a really refreshing way to think about cutting expenses, in a way that for me makes it more accessible. We also wanted to share a resource with you. You can scan the QR code there on the bottom of the screen. Um, or Vincenza is going to share a link in chat as well. Oops, I accidentally skipped forward. So our team has developed a cutting expenses guidebook. It's just a big book of different spending categories, such as saving, clothing, entertainment, grocery. You can see them here on the bottom. And then it gives you a bunch of different ideas in each of those categories for being able to cut expenses. It's mostly a resource to get the creative juices flowing, for you to be able to look at that and get ideas for how you can make adjustments in your personal situation. It's divided into three categories. The red section are those things that make the biggest difference in the least amount of time, but may not exactly be sustainable. Maybe you just for the next few months you're working on less income than usual and you need to make some bigger cuts just for the next few months. The red section may be a great way to do that. Um, you may find that you can keep those things going for a longer time, but in general, these are things that are making big results in a small amount of time, but may not be as sustainable. The yellow section then are those things that are getting you, that are still saving you money, but maybe more sustainable over the long run. You can start doing cutting back in those ways if you want to maybe build savings or um, go through some sort of transition or any number of things. And then the green section are ideas to you know, are more financial habits that you can start adopting that will make a big difference over the long term, but may not yield the biggest short term results, but will over the long run as you start building those financial habits. So just different sections for you to be able to get some ideas is what we're going for. So we'll leave this up for just a second if people want to scan the code or click the link in the chat. It is free too. So something else we wanted to talk about, again, the idea that we're cutting expenses doesn't mean we're cutting fun, right? Um, so this 45 Frugal Joys was adapted from the or inspired by the book 30-Day Money Cleanse. And the idea behind it is that there are a lot of things we can do to still focus on things that bring us joy, so that we can, cut back expenses to fulfill our other goals or our other daily needs, but we're not completely sacrificing them. We're more changing our mindset to focus more on those things that don't cost a lot of money. And there's 45 ideas here. They're really just, again, meant to get your creative juices flowing, to figure out what you want to do. There's lots of things. Go on a hike is something that you can do for free. Um, Send someone a handwritten note. That's a great thing. There's all sorts of these different things um, that can help bring you that joy. So we'll leave this up for a second if people wanted to read those over for just a second. So we also wanted to talk about another kind of change in mentality. When it comes to getting through tight times, a lot of times the only thing that we can do is either decrease our expenses or increase our income. Those are the ways that we can have more money to work with. A lot of times we can only cut so far. There's only so much that we can cut before it just becomes unreasonable for us. So in those cases, it may be helpful not just to think of decreasing expenses, but also be thinking of ways we can bring in a little bit more income, using our skills to maybe sell things on an online shop, or different hobbies, or there's any number of creative things we could do. We could pick up something part-time just for a small amount of time, do ride share services once a week or things like that. Vincenza said she's been selling used clothes online and made 80 bucks so far. So you can sell things that you're not using. Another strategy, if it's you can rent things out as well. There are websites, for example, if your kids are older and but you still have some of their little kid or baby things, there are websites where you can rent those out. I've got a friend who she's got a stand-up paddleboard. She uses it maybe 3 times a year. So she rents it out and makes money for that purchase that she made. She's not selling it. Selling it'll get you income one time, which is great, but she's renting it and it's getting her income, especially during the summer, several times a month. So that's something to consider as well. Don't just limit yourself to cutting expenses, but also broaden your horizons to think about what are some things I can do to increase income, even if it's only for a small amount of time, right? And there may be things that we could do to increase our income over a longer time as well, like develop new skills or certifications, or the Department of Workforce Services has lots of good resources about developing skills to get a better, higher paying job if you want to check them out. All right, any questions or comments in the chat before we get moving on to our third objective? So feel free to share those questions at any time. We did want to talk about for the last few minutes. Again, it's been a common theme of ours because we really have seen that people who try to cut out everything with budgeting aren't successful. So we're going to talk about those strategies that you can use to set up specific savings goals for fun and freedom for those things that you want to do. So with any of these savings accounts or with any savings goals, these are some tips that are helpful just in general. When you open a savings account, name it. This goes back to a principle of psychology. I don't know if you've heard before that you shouldn't name a stray because then you'll get attached to it, right? It's the same sort of thing. If we give something a name, all of a sudden we're attached to it and it's ours. We feel a sense of connection and ownership with it. So do that with your savings accounts. Don't just leave them as savings accounts number one, but actually give it a name. Say, this is my emergency savings. This is my vacation fund. This is our fun account. This is our school account. That helps you be not only more motivated to save, but also helps give a little bit of a check to make sure you're not pulling money from that account for things that it's not meant for. Not that that's a bad thing if you do have to do that. Sometimes we do have to, but it can help us keep more on track with our goals. It's also really helpful to automate. This is just in general with budgeting. The more things we can set up to happen automatically, the easier it's going to be for us to budget and to save. The less we have to think about it, the better it's going to be for us in the long run. So automate as much as you can. And then just because we're automating doesn't mean we're forgetting about it. We also need to monitor our progress and evaluate and adjust as needed. See how much we're saving towards that goal. And then maybe our situation changes and we need to adjust the amount we're saving. So make sure to keep doing that. So we're going to talk about 3 different strategies for being able to save for fun and freedom. And these are the 3 that we're going to talk about: a revolving spending account, a 1% fund, and a personal allowance. Starting off with the revolving savings or revolving spending account, this is not a specific type of savings account you're going to open, but it's a strategy for being able to manage those non-monthly but expected expenses for the year. So those things like Christmas or birthdays or school registration fees, or maybe you're a gardener and you know that right around April you're going to have to drop a chunk of money to get your garden ready. So any of these things that can do Costco trips, you could put Costco trips in here. I know some people who do lagoon season passes or ski season passes, and they buy those once a year. These are these things to be able to plan for all of those non-monthly things. So what we do is we add together all of those expected but non-monthly expenses for the year, and we divide by months or paychecks, whichever you'd want to do, to get an amount that we're going to automatically put into that account every month. We're going to make it a monthly budget item to plan for those things. Here's an example of how that could look. And here we've got birthdays, holidays, car registration, car insurance, all of these different things. And Vincenzo shared an example in the chat if you want to do this yourself. You can click on that form in the chat. But this person has added up together all of those different irregular things, and they've gotten to 1,520 for the year. Now, if you, it looks like the bottom of this is getting cut. Oh, no, it's not. Okay. You might be able to see it down there at the bottom. 126 a month. Divide by 12. So 126 a month in a savings account isn't it may not be a small amount. It's definitely not zero, but it definitely helps us because look at March, for example. March, that's $480 that they're spending in the month of March, whereas April is only 30. May and June, zero. So what we're doing is instead of having those expensive months and those not expensive months, we're flattening it out to make it a consistent thing for our budget. It's a consistent monthly thing for us. Can really help us make sure we're planning for these things in the best way possible and make sure that we're able to cover those irregular expenses when they come up. Some of these may be essential irregulars like car registration. Some of these may be non-essential like lagoon season passes, for example. But there's any number of things that we can do that we can add to this, but it's just a way to help us plan for those and make sure we're still good to go with even when times are tight, that these expensive months aren't going to break the bank. Yeah, car repairs, that could be a thing too. It's just helping us make it, especially in tight times where these expensive months aren't going to break our budget. We're helping us get through it all. Next strategy we want to talk about is a 1% spending account. This is something to add purpose, fulfillment, spontaneity. It can be used for whatever you'd like. And the principle behind it is that we are opening a separate place for this money. It helps us make sure we're not overspending by opening a separate account. And then we automate 1% of your take home pay, each paycheck, to be put into this account. And what are you using it for? That's entirely up to you. Maybe you want to use it for giving, for when people come up with those unexpected, fundraisers for school or something unexpected happens and you want to be able to donate to something. Maybe use it for giving. My family, we use it for those fun, unexpected expenses as a family. For example, a Paw Patrol museum opened this last month at Thanksgiving Point in Lehigh. I've got two 4-year-olds. Of course, we needed to go to the Paw Patrol museum. So this can help us take advantage of those spontaneous, fun experiences when they come up. The only rule behind it is that you set parameters for your spending. What you've got in the accounts is what you've got. If that's $50 a month and you want to buy something that's $60, then that's what you've got. You can't say, well, I'm going to buy it and only pay myself 40 next month. No, that's not how it works. You can save from month to month if you don't use the whole thing, but that's the idea behind it, is that it's just 1% of our pay being put into a separate place to use in the way that's most fulfilling for us. Why 1%? It's because 1%, with 1%, you don't really notice that hit on your budget. It's a lot less noticeable than something like 10%. So, yeah, thanks, Vincenza. Talk to HR, to payroll, and you can separate your paychecks into different accounts. So maybe this is something you set up to have 1% automatically taken out of your paycheck. You can also set these up with banks or credit unions as well. A lot of times you can transfer a percentage of what comes in, but there's lots of different ways to do it. But it's just a way to help make sure that you're able to take advantage of those things that bring you joy in life without breaking the bank. The last thing we wanted to share, the last method we wanted to share was a personal allowance. It's similar to the 1% spending accounts. You set it up in the same way. You open a separate account and then you automate a designated amount to go into that account every month. The difference between them is a personal allowance is just for you. Ideally, a personal allowance should be set up for each person in the family that uses the money, right? Could be maybe you've got an allowance for your kids and then an allowance for each of for you and your spouse, for example.
That's true.
But different than a 1% fund, a personal allowance is a way for you to focus on what brings you joy and fulfillment. Not everyone else in your family, but you. Um, it's an incredibly important thing, especially for financial autonomy in relationships. Each person is going to have a specific amount of money set up for them that they can use on whatever they would like without judgment. It doesn't matter if you think your spouse is using it in a silly way or a stupid way, it doesn't matter. It's their personal allowance that they can do with what they like, right? We're letting them spend that money that's theirs on what they want. And by setting it up in advance to be a specific amount, like for example, 1% or 2%, we're making it so that it's an amount that's not going to break the bank. We don't have to worry about spending money on something silly because that's what the money's there for. We're not sacrificing our grocery funds to spend money on something silly, but it's money that's being separated out intentionally for that reason. So we can make sure it's an amount that doesn't break the bank. This is an incredibly important strategy, especially if you're managing finances in a partnership, but even people who manage finances themselves. This can be a very important thing to give you the financial autonomy to spend money on those things that you want that don't have any other reason behind them except that you like it. It can be a valuable strategy for keeping with your budget and making sure that you're keeping on track and not sacrificing the essentials for those things that are just just plain silly. So what? As we're nearing the end of today, let's talk. Fun and freedom accounts, great motivators for reaching specific financial objectives. Look at a revolving savings or a 1% personal allowance. These things that can help us stay on track, get rid of those expensive months, and make sure we're not overspending on those things that are simply there to bring us fun and enjoyment. Now what? As we're ending today, we want to give you a couple of take-home assignments, you could say. Set one goal of what you want to do from this workshop today. It could be small. It could be just organizing your essentials versus non-essentials. It could be trying out a specific budgeting app. Whatever it may be, set one goal and start small and build momentum. Create your budget using a method that works best for you. Take it in bite-sized pieces. Like we said, it sometimes takes a bit of work to set up a budget, but can be so helpful, especially during tight times. And then weekly check-ins. We'd invite you to check in weekly with your finances to make sure that you're staying on track. It can be a helpful gut check and help make it so you are staying in tune with your spending without making it such a big task at the end of the month. Yeah, would anyone like to share what their favorite tip was or something that they liked from today's webinar? We love seeing what people are actually enjoying so we can make sure we keep sharing those. While you're sharing that in chat, we always appreciate that. I'll put up the link and the QR code. Like I said at the beginning, we're a grant-funded program, and the reason we're able to provide these classes and resources, such as the revolving savings book or the cutting expenses booklet, the reason we're able to provide those for free is because of these surveys. So if you would please click the link that Vincenzo shared in chat or scan the QR code on screen. I'm loving these comments. Thank you, people, for sharing. Vincenzo, maybe if you want to copy and paste the link once more so it's toward the bottom of the chat, that would be wonderful. So if you would please make sure to take out make sure to take this survey. It is anonymous. It's a short 8-question survey. Um, just asking you what you liked from today, if you're going to apply what you learned today. Um, these surveys are so helpful for us and help us show our grant funders that we're teaching people useful things. Um, so thank you so much. Like I said, it is an anonymous survey. For the first question, if you would please click budgeting tips as the topic. But as So after the short 8-question survey, the anonymous survey, it will redirect you to a separate form so that if you would like us to send you a prize to say thank you for taking the survey, you can fill out your contact information there. It's not linked to your survey response at all, but it will redirect you to that form if you want us to send you a prize. We've got prizes like reusable shopping bags, budgeting envelopes, hand sanitizers. We've got different things that we send out to people. So if you want, you can fill that out there. But please make sure to take the survey, and we'll make sure this gets sent out in a follow-up email as well. Lastly, if you enjoyed today, um, oh, this one has music. If you enjoyed today, follow us at Utah Money Matters. That's who we are on Instagram. You can see what we're doing, or visit this topic here, finance.usu.edu/EFW. Um, that there at that's our website where you can see all of the classes we are currently teaching. We do weekly webinars, a whole number of topics every single week. This week we are teaching about credit. Last week we taught about investing. We teach about budgeting, about debt reduction, about organizing your personal information, estate planning, anything that has to do with personal finance, we teach. We do webinars weekly on Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon. We also teach classes in the community all the time, and we are open if you're part of an organization and would like to request a class specifically from us, you can do that as well at that website. You can request that we come teach a free class to your group. So we would love to see you guys at our future webinars. I know I've seen quite a few people in this chat at our webinars already, but if you haven't been to one, we'd love to see you there at the topic of your choosing, and they're all completely free.